Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, I'm going to be attempting to explain my system on how I choose jigs. Alright? And I know that I'm oversimplifying things, and I know I'm gonna leave a few details that I might forget because I don't work with a script, guys. This is all like one shoot. Alright? So, bear with me, and if I forget something, or if you think I forgot to mention something, please comment below. And also, if you're new to the channel, hey, welcome. This channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from ultralight, big game, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. Today we're talking about how I select jigs, and this will help you when you're buying jigs, when you're replacing ones that you've lost, or when you're first starting out and you want to buy your first set of jigs. Alright, so this is the very, very small sampling of what I have in the inventory. And by the way, this theory that I use can be carried over to fast jigging, ultralight, your micro jigging, everything, light jigging. So it's pretty much the same system I use for all of them. Now, before this, I'd like to discuss how I even got to this point. So, while I was arranging stuff, organizing, I found that I actually segregate the jigs into 3 basic widths. And if it falls on that width, then I'll put a number associated with it. And we'll talk more about that later. But before we even start this, let me show you something very, very important because it affects the jigs and how they move. Okay? Because this is also, what I'm about to discuss is also with the premise that you have this part sorted. I'm going to show you 2 things, alright? Actually, you know what? Let me get something. I'm going to show you US spec line. And this is 6 pounds. And Japanese spec line, this is also 6 pounds. I will put a jig on top of these lines so that they can be stretched out a little bit. Okay, and now I'm gonna zoom in just so you can see. Alrighty. Okay. There we go. So this is very important, because this is a very big enabler. Now imagine if this was, let's say, PE2, somewhere between 35 to 47 pounds. PE, okay, which stands for polyethylene, and the whole numbering system is based on the GO system, which is a standard measurement for thread or thread material. It could be rope, nylon, braid in several parts of Asia. So this is listed as PE 0.4. I don't know what the number of this is, but it's actually listed as 6 pound test. So just as a comparison, this is 6 pound Japanese line. This is American spec 6 pound test. You could see that it's actually thick, very thick. What I'm saying is that it's a huge enabler, because when you're dropping down deep and there are currents that you deal with, thinner line obviously will have less drag. Another factor is this. The braid we use is multicolored. And what this does for you is that you'll know the approximate depth of where your jig is. It changes color every 10 meters. Nothing special there. It's very ordinary. This is something that we use almost on a day-to-day basis in Asia. Very, very important, because it's this simple. And I'm going to bring out these 3 jigs. So with these 3, if you have thin line, the diameter is thin. It doesn't mean to say it's weak, okay? But the diameter is thin. You're dropping down. And if there's a cross current down there, a lot of you guys that are using braid that would be too thick would immediately be going to this or this. Instead, you could be using wide jigs, especially when you're targeting fish like grouper, snapper, and you're fishing very near the bottom. Instead of being able to use this, because this has a lot of drag, you resort to something that's slightly narrow or even the narrower types. And this would be the shape that would give you the biggest chance of catching grouper or snapper or fish that are feeding near or on the bottom. The current's drag on the line is very, very important because it also dictates how long you're able to stay down there until you reset again. The answer, guys, is using the right size jig for the area that you're fishing. It's not putting on more weight on the jig. If a 280-gram jig goes to the bottom and is enough to reach the bottom, you don't need to use something as big as a 700-gram. That's just wrong. It's not only that it will tire you out, it would also make your system very, very clunky. And see, the premise of this whole slow jigging thing is sensitivity. If you have everything balanced, when the fish literally breathes on the jig, you'd be able to feel it. And sometimes what happens is that while you're jigging, fish would take it and then go up. In which case, if you have a heavy jig, good luck, because you're not going to feel that. And you'll be missing a lot of strikes. And this is the whole reason why your rod, reel, line, jigs, hooks should be in harmony when it comes to slow jigging. Now, when it comes to selecting jigs, I generally measure mine by width. And it's as simple as basically taking a caliper, measuring the widest part of the jig, and I see that it's 2. All right, and this one is about, measured this already, about 2.5 or so. Okay, and then this one would be 3 right there. So I would say this is number ones for me. Number ones would be wide ones. Number twos would be the ones that are in the middle of the width spectrum, and then the narrow ones I would put in as number 3s. And yeah, it's a very simple system. 1, 2, 3. Now, if I use, let's say, jigs get cut off, or I check my inventory and I say like, oh wow, I am missing some jigs and I want to replace them, or I just put them out in front of me, and immediately, just by one look, I would know I need number 2s, I need number 1s, or I need number 3s. More of these. This helps me basically stop myself from buying more than I need. It's that simple. Okay? And when you're using this, it doesn't mean to say that this will not work in low current situations. I know a lot of people say that you use slim, long jigs when the current is fast, and you use middle with jigs when the current is not too fast, and then when the current's very low, you use this. Part of the problem that a lot of people face is something that they actually create themselves because they're not using the right line. That's 90% of the issue right there, especially in the US. Okay, so if you start using braid that's actually what you're supposed to be using, the PE line, which is thinner. It doesn't mean to say they're weak, by the way. Then you'd be able to really say that, hey, I could use like, thin, slim jigs when the current is super, super fast. And it's amazing that they actually work in waters like that. Sometimes people just give up and they don't fish anymore. Sometimes when the current starts to move, this just makes their drift so fast, and then their lines would not be perfectly vertical anymore. But it has nothing to do with the jig's weight or the jig itself. It has a lot to do with the drag on the line. What to drop first? Very simple. I start in the middle. And the reason is, it's a very easy and it's a faster way to eliminate things. If you start from the bottom, because a lot of people think that, okay, let's try wide ones and let's see, if they work, and then after that, oh, it's too fast, and then the drift is too fast, or you're scoping out too fast, and then they resort to these. But see, the thing is, if you start with mid-width jigs, they do a little bit of the function of this and a little bit of a function of this. So they roll and a little bit of slide. Rolling, this is the specialist for rolling and wobbling. This is the specialist for sliding. Okay, very little roll on this, very little wobble, but they slide, and that's when the fish strike. So this flutters a lot, this flutters less, this flutters the least. That's something that you need to actually keep in mind. Now, when you're fishing this, and then you'll see that, hey, you know what? It's moving too fast. So you switch to this. Or if you find that your line is going diagonal faster than you want, then you switch to this. And look, this is 280 and this is 300. Very little difference. The main difference here is that this is just longer. There's a bit of a variance when it comes to their width, but you have to set the limit yourself. As I said, 2 centimeters and below, I mark it as number 3. 2 centimeters and above, but not more than 3 centimeters, I label them as number 2s. And then 3 centimeters and more, I label them as number 3. So it doesn't matter what they are. Let's say if I go to my tackle box, check what I have, and then measure. Okay, and I know that this is 3 centimeters. I put it there. Okay, and I just do a range. Let's say for 350, this is the max of the range. I do everything from 200 all the way to 350 for my fishing in, let's say, 150 meters to about 200, which is most of the fishing that we do here. Any deeper than that or any more extreme condition than that, that's when I bring out the bigger guys. This is a very extreme example, you know. And by the way, if you look at this, in the scheme of things, when it gets bigger, you actually measure it, okay? And it is just under 3. And this is a number 2. And I have number 3s that are super, super wide. And I also have number 3s, number 1s that are super wide, and I have number 3s that are very long. Still in the same weight category. So again, for me, it's just easier for me to actually just think, oh, that's a number 1, that's a number 2. So yeah, it's a very easy 1, 2, 3 system. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Now, colors. A lot of people are talking about colors. What's the favorite, you know, what's the best color? They swear by different colors and stuff like that. In reality, what it is that you have to think about how the fish see things down there, because after about 200 feet, you hardly see any color. And that's very important, a very, very important detail for all of us to actually consider when you're fishing down there. So this is 300 and I'm fishing this jig up to about 300 meters. And if we shine a light, you can see that it's glowing right there. And this is important because at that depth, things don't look the way they look on top. And there's hardly any light at that depth. So to keep things simple, the deeper you go, the more glow you use. All right? The more shallow you are, the more color you can put in on your jig. It's a very, very straightforward thing for me. A lot of people swear by pink. This one also has glow stripes. So again, for this, something that I use on tuna. Now, by the way, it doesn't mean to say that if you're fishing, like take for example, 2,000 meters, and then you're dropping down, it's supposed to be about what, 2 kilos of weight to the bottom. But see, the fish are just holding at 60 meters, and then you start dropping big stuff. It doesn't work like that. So you usually, what you do is actually drop the jig that's appropriate for number 1, the fish, and the depth. Okay, so it doesn't mean to say that, hey, this is 2,000 meters, you know, I'm gonna put in this much weight. Nah, it doesn't work like that. All right, so if the fish are holding at 60 meters, like take for example, really a real world example, fish are holding at 60 meters, and we know that they're yellowfin tuna. I'd be using anything between 150 to 200 grams, just because the size of the bait fish that they'll bite would be the same size as something like this. So this is a 250 gram koika from Storm. So the color, this is one of those that actually drop. So the color at that depth, they could still see color. All right. So I put something that's silver with glow. That's that. And sometimes if I want to get down a bit faster, I'll put on like a 330, the same, with the colors and all that. But if I'm fishing the bottom in water that's like 150 to 200 meters, more than likely you'll see me do an all glow or something that has a lot of glow. So these are ones that I painted right here, and you can see that this thing also just glows, and this is for the sole purpose of fishing deeper water. So you'll have colored jigs, and you could use any sort of color you want. Really, it's not something that's an absolute, but it's something that makes sense. All right. So in summary, as far as colors are concerned, I would drop something like this first. Okay. Real world scenario. We just arrived at the spot. What do I drop first? It would end what color. So I would go there, look for a jig that's on my number 2 in my scale. And then I would look for something that glows or has some glow to it if I plan to fish mid-depth, if I'm targeting tuna or whatever. But if I'm targeting fish like snapper and grouper, more than likely I would be dropping something that's all glow in this with category. All right. So that's it. Now, very, very simple. I hope that it's something that you learn from. I'm not saying that this is the most absolute and the best system out there, but it's something that has worked for me over the years, and I've been doing this for my fast jigs, my ultralight, light, micro jigs, and even the heavy stuff, and it works. You give it a try. But this is also with the premise that you have the right line to use. Yeah, the system works. That's it. Anyway, so that's it for the sharing for this video. Longer than I expected. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Hope you learned something. Class dismissed. I'll see you in the next one.